Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to this session on central counterparty recovery and resolution. Obviously, a very topical and very popular subject. I'm not sure. I think many people would be surprised that we have filled a reasonably large room on this subject, but we're looking forward to an interesting debate. My name is Tom Huertas. I am currently a partner at EY, and I chair our global regulatory network. That is a network of former supervisors. In my case, I was with the UK FSA, a member of the Basel Committee, and alternate chair of the European Banking Authority. My task this afternoon is to moderate what I'm sure will be a very interesting and informative discussion. To get us started, I'd like to just set the stage with a few comments and then turn over to our speakers. To remind everyone, financial market infrastructures and central counterparties are, by definition, systemic. They usually operate on what might be called a hub and spoke model, where the financial market infrastructures at the center. There are members around, and the members interact with customers. Effectively, the members are at the center of the show, and it is precisely the interaction between the members and the central counterparty that is of most interest for the purposes of financial stability, and the reason why the regulators, financial stability boards, central banks, the authorities are so interested in making sure that central counterparties are robust, that they have good recovery and resolution procedures. Now, central counterparty resolution should be what the economists call a tail of the tail event. So extremely unlikely. And the reason for that is basically the reform that has been taken place in the EU and on the global stage. The probability of a member entry, that is a bank who is a member of the CCP, going into resolution prior to the crisis, as we all found out during the crisis, was somewhat high. But the banking reform has brought that down through the increase in capital and liquidity requirements, through the introduction of recovery and resolution procedures at the bank level, so the likelihood that a member will actually get to the point where the member fails is, by at least most people's estimations, been significantly reduced. Part of that program was to introduce the mandatory clearing for derivatives to force OTC derivatives onto central counterparties, and that raised the importance of keeping central counterparties robust and upped the importance of recovery and resolution procedures at central counterparties. So that brings us down number two, the probability of resolution leading to member default at CCPs. Resolution reform at the member level, the globally systemic important banks that are the chief members of central counterparties. It's been introduced, and I'll explain this in more detail in a moment, in a manner that will allow continuity at the failed member, so that if, heaven forbid, pick an example, Bank X were to fail, the resolution procedures at the bank are now such that it is possible that the bank can be recapitalized and can continue in operation, so that the default of the bank to the central counterparty effectively never occurs, and the central counterparty need not start its recovery procedures. So the possibility that a member default will lead to the need for recovery and resolution at the central counterparty is much reduced. Nonetheless, because central counterparties are so important, there's a great deal of emphasis being placed on the need to keep central counterparties robust. You can think of it like the nuclear power plant at Fukushima. Great wall. The need is to make sure that the wall is high enough so if the earthquake is large enough, the wall will still prevent the flood from coming in and destroying the plant. So on the three CPMI IOSCO principles have set a standard for recovery and resolution at central counterparties such that they be able to withstand the simultaneous failure of two of their largest participants at the same time. A very high standard indeed. And the central counterparties are in the process of building those types of defenses. Should all of that nonetheless work, then, should all of that nonetheless not work, and the central counterparty has to go into resolution, that is the end of the story. And what the challenge is to figure out a process effectively that will have a recovery and resolution procedure at the central counterparty that will assure continuity in financial markets and lead to financial stability. So an extremely unlikely event, but one with extremely unpleasant consequences if it did occur. A note about the interaction between resolution at the member bank and the need to start resolution or recovery procedures at the CCP. Effectively, there's a rather elaborate chart, but the message is rather simple. It is the need for coordination and the need to avoid the CCP jumping the gun and starting to liquidate the positions of the member before the resolution authority of the failed member gets a chance to put through the resolution in a manner that will assure the continuity of the member. If the resolution of the GSIB that has failed succeeds in stabilizing the GSIB can continue in operation and continue to meet its obligations to the central counterparty, and the central counterparty need never start its recovery procedures. If the CCP jumps the gun and starts to liquidate, that will effectively diminish the probability that the GSIB can be resolved satisfactorily and will, at least in my opinion, create the very problem at the CCP that the CCP wishes to avoid. So coordination between the authorities responsible for the CCP, the resolution authorities for the GSIB is, in my view, to be recommended. It is a very complex task, especially in a world where a single GSIB operates in many CCPs and all GSIBs are in common members of the most significant CCPs. So if a GSIB fails, practically all of the central counterparties will come under pressure at approximately the same time. So getting this right is a big, big ticket. And I now turn over to our panelists to give us some indication of what the problem and the solution will be.